Welcome. Great to see so many faces here in Munich. My name is JoeySuki. It's my first time here in Munich in the beautiful BMW world. First question, who knows my name? Like, who knows who I am? Okay, let's start with a little backstory then, because it's not too many, so I'll tell you a bit more about who I am and what I'm going to tell more about today. As I said, my name is Joey. JoeySuki was my artist name. I've always been a DJ and producer. It all started for me about 12 years ago, maybe even longer, when I was a little 16-year-old kid. I started DJing at weddings and like private parties and those kind of things. And I really had no clue what I was getting into. I just really liked making music. Well, not making music at that time. I just liked music at that time. And after a few times of playing at parties, I knew DJing was the thing that I liked to do most. And I also noticed I started to make some money from it, so that's a nice thing as well. So from there I went to playing locally, so cafes, clubs, bars, all those kind of things, which triggered me to start to make my own music. You know, it's fun to DJ and it's fun to play other people's songs, but I thought it was a great idea to make my own music as well and to start spreading my own music out there in the world. You have to imagine, like, this is about 10 years ago. It's a different world than we live in right now. There were no tutorials on YouTube, so everything I had to do, I had to find it out myself. And luckily I had a cousin who already knew how to make music, so he helped me with a lot of those things. So when I had a question about, let's say, music production, he came in and taught me what to do, and that's how I learned music production. It all started with me with Appster. Who knows Appster? Yeah, he's been signed with Wall Recordings now. We made a lot of music together, and in those first 2 years when we made music together, we managed to get a release on Sneakers Music. Probably, how many people know Sneakers Music? Probably know one, two guys. It's a long time ago. It was like the beginning of spinning records. Like when spinning was small, that was the beginning of everything. And I started releasing on that label, together with the likes of Afrojack, Hardwell, Nicky Romero, all those guys were on that label. And that's where like the dance industry, the dance music hype started for everyone. All those guys who were on that label are the bigger guys right now. So you kind of could say that from that moment on my career took off. I started to get gigs in the Netherlands. I'm from the Netherlands, by the way. I started to get gigs throughout the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, in Rotterdam, in Utrecht, all those kind of places. And suddenly, a few months, maybe a year or a half later, I got an email from a guy from South Africa telling me, and I can still remember it as the day of yesterday, I got an email from somebody I didn't know telling me, Joey, we've licensed your music from Sneakers Music. We want to release your music in South Africa, and we would like to book you to play there, like to promote the release actually. So my mind was, what's going on? You know, like I can go to South Africa, they're gonna pay for my hotel, they're gonna pay for my flight, I'm gonna get paid to do my gigs. Let's go. I was ready to go all in, I was ready, I was like 21 years old at that time. At that time, my parents stepped in and said like, okay, who is this guy? This guy is emailing you out of nowhere, like he's ready to pay for you, ready to pay for your hotel, for your flights, he's gonna give you free. Who is this guy and why does he want to bring you over? So at that moment, that was a crucial moment in my career. If my parents told me at that moment that I couldn't go on that tour, my career would have went a lot different. But luckily they told me, Joey, if you feel like it's trustworthy, and it was a bigger company, I said, Mom, it's right, let's go. So I took someone with me, an older person who was supervising me, some kind of tour manager, now looking back at it. So I went to South Africa, did the tour, was a great experience. And that tour made it clear to me, this is the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. And like I said, I was 21 years old at that moment. And that's when when I started to tour the world. I was also starting to release more and more music on bigger labels, such as Spinning Records, on Revealed. I did a collaboration with Hardwell. I've played at Tomorrowland, I've played at Creamfields. I've been on a lot of countries in the world to play the music. Until 2014, which is 5 years ago now. I'm 30 years old right now, so at that time I was about 25 years old. In that year, I was at the peak of my career. I had a really busy summer schedule. Like I said, Tomorrowland was in there, Ibiza was in there, an Asia tour was in there, lots of gigs in Europe. My releases were doing really well. Everything was what I was dreaming of. I was living the life that I was dreaming for at that moment. But something was off. I felt like something inside of me told me like, you know, you're living the life everyone tells you that's great. It's the dream life to everyone else. But to me, it felt a bit off. It felt like I was living someone else's life. I wasn't happy with the things I was doing. I wasn't happy playing. I wasn't happy releasing music. I wasn't happy talking to fans. And that mindset, like, it told me something was off. But I really didn't pay any attention to it. I just had to go on and on and on because the bookings were scheduled, you know. I had to turn up. I had to do those gigs that were in my calendar, so I had to turn up. I had to get into that flight. I have to meet with the promoters. I have to play that gig. And everything again on the next day and the next day. Until I went to India. I had a small little tour of 5 days. And I was supposed to do 3 gigs in 5 days in India. So lots of flights and lots of distribution things. And that's where things went wrong. As soon as I came in at the airport in Amsterdam, I noticed like, okay, I'm really feeling like I don't want to go. I want to stay at home. Which is a weird thing, you know, like I was going to India for 3 gigs for 5 days. Was supposed to be the best thing on earth because I've worked to get there for like 10 years. I still went. So I get into the plane and like from that moment on things just blacked out. I did the whole tour, I played those 3 gigs. I've managed to do those things all, but somehow I didn't remember anything of it. I just completely blacked out. So when I was at the gig, one of the things that I still remember is that every time I was in the hotel, I was calling either my girlfriend or my mom on Skype because I was feeling so alone and I kept crying and crying and I just wanted to go home. I just felt like terrible. I felt like shit. And I want to go home. But I still had those gigs. So I had to do those gigs. So I did those gigs. So when I came back home from India, I was crying at the airport because my mom came and picked me up and I said, Mom, something's off. Something's not going well in here. I need to do something with it. So I went to a psychologist, I went to a few coaches, and after like a few months, I found out that the DJ life just wasn't made for me. I just didn't like being away from home that much. I just didn't like being in front of that many people that much. I didn't like being in the center of attention. And it's fun because right now I am. You know, there's still a crowd for me and there's still the center of attention. But still, it feels different. So at that moment, I tried everything to still make my career work, to still make music, release music, DJ, do whatever I want to do. But it just didn't work for me. So I decided to quit. In 2015, I decided to end my career as a DJ and as a producer and say, that's it, this life just isn't made for me. So at the highest point of my career, I collapsed and I decided to quit. That's like my career in a nutshell. Like I've said, I've done some good stuff. I've done a lot of bad stuff. I've made a lot of bad decisions in my career. And when I got out of the burnout, I was 25 years old and I just decided to quit my career as a DJ and as a producer. But you have to imagine that little thing, like my career, was all I've got at that moment. The only thing why I woke up in the morning was to make music all day long, to promote my music all day long, to play gigs all day long. So if you take that out of my life, I had nothing left. And that's completely how I felt at that moment. I had nothing. Aside from that, my relation also ended. I had to get back home, like live with my parents. I was at rock bottom. So I started to think like, okay, I need to build myself a new life, you know, like now that I left the music industry, I need to find a new passion. I need to find a reason for myself to get out of bed every morning and to do the thing that I like to do. So I started thinking, what was the thing I missed myself in my career? Why did it all went wrong? Why did it all went south and it ended up like this? Something beautiful like the thing that I had, why did it ended up like this? Who knows the story of Avicii? And who has seen the documentary of Avicii? When I saw that documentary, I saw myself. It was the exact same story. It was just scary to me. Of course, the way he ended is different than I did. But still, it was scary for me to see how accurate his life was comparable to me. And during that period, like more artists came out to tell that life's hard. You know, like Nicky Romero came out telling it's a hard life. Like I have anxiety. Hardwell just quit his career, or at least paused his career. All those big names started dropping out, and to me that was like a notification, like, hey, I'm not the only person out here experiencing these feelings. So I started thinking, what could I do, and what's the thing that drives me for the future? Because I was 25 years old, and I needed to do something else in my life. I needed to find that little spark to light that fire back on inside myself. I started thinking, what did I miss in my career? And after a few weeks, months of thinking, I noticed something. I have been seeing a few coaches to talk about my life, to talk about my personality, to talk about my profession. And I started thinking, there is no one in this industry, in this music industry, that is helping me with these kind of things. And to me, that was the moment I started thinking, that's the thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna guide DJs and artists, music producers in their career to give them a healthy career, like a successful, healthy career. Because as I mentioned, it's a beautiful lifestyle. I can recommend it to anyone. It's the beautiful thing on planet. You can see a lot of places, you can meet a lot of people. It's a great lifestyle. But if you don't think about yourself, and if you don't think about the decisions you made, it's gonna end up dirty. And that's not the way you want it to be. You want to make sure it's gonna be a maintainable lifestyle. So I started a new company. Who of you have heard of the name Artist Coaching? A few of you, okay. So I started a new company called Artist Coaching. I started to put out content about building an artist's career, like business side and also the mental side. So how would you strategically build a career? Marketing, branding, those kind of things. But also how to do all those things and still stay healthy, mentally and physically. So that's what I do right now. I guide guys like you, but also the higher level of artists, like the top artists out there, to stay healthy and successful in their career. And to come back to the topic of today, like why I decided to talk about that the music industry is about more than just music. I know that most of you, who's a music producer out there? Oh, there's quite a few. Music production is pretty important. Without music, you're not an artist at all. So there has to be music. But unfortunately, music is just like the tiniest bit of your career. If no one knows you exist, no one knows is going to listen to your music. So you need to find out a way to communicate to the outside world that you exist, that your music exists, and that you are capable of making that kind of things, that those beautiful things that you've created, your little baby. That's how I felt it, at least. Like if I put out a release, I put out a little baby outside that world, and yeah, I was curious to see what the other people were going to think of it. So why I decided to pick that is because I noticed that a lot of people that I coach right now and a lot of people that follow me on social media are struggling with it. They are struggling to build an artist's career. They are struggling to reach out to an audience, to find an audience. Because if there's no one to talk to, why matter? Why matter, of course? Like you first have to find people to talk to. Why I also know how that feels is, like I said, I had a collaboration with Hardwell. That was at the stage where he just entered the DJ Mag Top 100 at that moment. I believe it was spot 22, 21. So there was a lot of buzz around him. And for me, having a collaboration with him was really important because he was this big DJ and I was this little DJ. So you can imagine having a collaboration with a big DJ really boosts your career. And it did. The problem was, I never thought about branding, marketing, or any of those things. I just was a guy who liked making music. And that's the only thing I was doing. Making music all day long. Releasing a lot of music and DJing. Those were the only things that I was doing. And when I had that collaboration with Hardwell, a friend of mine, one of my best friends, approached me and said, Joey, what are you going to do with this release? Like, who's going to know about you that you have this release if you're not going to communicate it to the outside world? Because I wasn't doing that much with social media. Of course, social media was different back then, but there still were a few platforms and I had a decent following. So he asked me, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to market it? How are you going to brand it? And I had no idea what he was talking about. I said, marketing, branding, what's that? And from that moment on, he decided to start guiding me with the business side of the music industry. So I just kept making music and I just kept doing all those things I was doing. And at the same time, he was helping me and teaching me how to brand and market myself as an artist. So this was about around 7.5 years ago, 8 years ago. And we started making contests out of it. So at that moment, building an audience was like a goal to me. He said, like, you know what, let's just make a contest out of it. We're going to reach 10,000 fans in the end of the year. And then I said, no, we're going to make 12,000. And in the end of the year, we're going to measure it. And if I was right or if he was right, we had to take each other out of dinner or something. We started to make a contest out of it because that gets me driven. I need to have a goal and I want to, I'm a competitive guy, let's say it's that. So that release with Hardwell triggered me to start thinking about branding, to start thinking about marketing, and to start thinking about putting my artist name out there and to reach a bigger crowd to eventually become a bigger brand within the industry. And I noticed a lot of people just aren't doing that right now. And I believe that right now, 2019, is one of the best possible times that we've had to be an artist. I've been in times where social media just wasn't there. I'm still a young guy, but in that thing I'm pretty old actually. I've worked in a time where there was no social media. Right now you have social media. With one click on a button you can reach the whole world. To me that's easier. Alongside that, I was relying on labels. Of course labels are still important, some of them, not all of them. Labels are still important. But you have the opportunity to release your music yourself. Like if everyone is telling you no, if every A&R manager that you're sending your music to is telling you, this music sucks, we don't want it, we're not going to release it. If everyone keeps telling you that, and you still believe in your product, your music, you have the opportunity to release it yourself. Through TuneCore, to DistroKid, to CD Baby, to all of those platforms out there. And to me, that's the best opportunity you can get as an artist, because I was relying on other people. Other people were deciding what was going to happen with my career. And right now, as an artist, you can decide what's going to happen with your career. You are the only one responsible for the success that you're going to get. Of course, there's a small piece of luck out there that you can have in your career. Like for me, running into Hardwell and getting a collaboration with him. Some people might say it's luck. I don't like to call it that because I've worked hard to get to a certain point where I stood out enough for him to notice me. If I didn't put in that energy for him to notice me, it would have never happened. So I don't like calling it luck, but some people do. Right now as an artist, I would encourage you all to make music, release as much music as possible, put it out there either through a big label or just releasing it yourself. Find ways to reach an audience, and the best ways right now is like Spotify playlists or maybe Facebook groups or whatever. Try to find a way, because it's all in your hands. Like all the opportunities are there. The only thing you have to do is use it and take the opportunity to get to a certain level. So that's my story. That's the thing I had to tell for today. When I speak on conferences like this, I do this on multiple places in the world, and every time I just got a lot of questions. So what I decided to do is the time that we have together, I want to make the best use of it by saying I want to help you guys. So you've heard my story now, but if you have some questions regarding your own music career, we're going to do a Q&A right now. So if you have questions, I have a mic right here. I'll bring it to you somewhere in the room, and you can ask me your questions about like your branding, your marketing, maybe it's something else about your music career, anything that you're struggling with, I'm here to help you. So, are there any questions right now? Yes.
So, my name is Antonio.
Hello.
And I'm struggling with releasing my music, I found a small label from Sweden, and they told me, yeah, you can release on our label, your music is good, and stuff like that. And then they sent me a contract, and I signed it, and they told me I'm gonna get special promotion and also a video. And do you think on this way, if you work with a small label which is not that known, is better than releasing your own music through, I don't know, distribute or something?
Yeah, it depends. You know, to me, the only reason why a label could still be valuable if they have a bigger fan base than you have, or like a different fan base than you have, so you can tap into a different audience, or they have a great promotional network. So if they are able to get your track into DJ Chesto's podcast or in DJ Hardwell's podcast, and you're not capable of doing that, if they are capable of doing that and they have a bigger audience, in that case it's useful to you. Most of the time you end up with the bigger labels, like Revealed, like Hexagon, like Spinnin, those kind of labels. Smaller labels, as the name says, smaller labels, don't have that big of a reach. So it depends on how big you are yourself. If you have around 5,000 followers and 5,000 people interested in your music, and they have 500, why would you need them? Like, you can still put out your music yourself, and if they aren't able to get your music in their podcast or whatever they do to promote your music, if they aren't capable of doing that, why would you give away 50, 70, 80% of your income if you can do it yourself? So you have to find out what the label's actually capable of doing for you. If you were going to give away 50%, 70% of your income, what are you going to get back from it? Like, what are they going to do for you that makes them worth that 50%? Yeah? Any other questions? Can you give it to him? Thank you.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
I'm Yoka. I have a question. Yoka.
Yoka.
I have a question. So if you are an upcoming DJ, like I produce music for a few years now, but I struggle to get gigs, how do I approach like clubs that want to have EDM shows, but you don't have like much followers?
Yeah. The thing you should keep in the back of your mind is that club promoters mainly think about money. Like I told it yesterday in another panel as well, I see club promoters in two different ways. One club promoter is only interested in booking you because you make him money, as in you sell tickets. So the question you should ask yourself, if someone books you, how many people will buy tickets? How many people do you think are right now?
Right now, not many, I guess. I'm living in a city, I'm from Berlin, and the EDM community isn't, you would think in Berlin there's much to get into,
techno,
but it's really techno heavy. Yeah, so my reach isn't really big at this moment. So in my hometown maybe a few people would come up, but
yeah, it depends, but that's the main question a promoter asks himself. So what if I book him, how much money will I make from him? So that's one promoter, but there also are like other promoters who are still able to book talented DJs. So if you're still not that big, but he really believes that you are going to be that big guy 2 years from now or 2 years from now, he will give you the opportunity.
All right.
And there's not a lot of them, but there's a few of them.
I have another follow-up question. Like if I'm not really having much real, so I moved to Berlin 1.5 years ago, and it's not a problem for me to move to another place. For example, like Cologne is really big, and there's a huge community, or maybe here in Munich is it better? I don't know. Does it make sense to move to some places where the community is just better? There are more clubs, for example.
It depends, as in it makes the networking a bit easier, because I still believe that face-to-face contact is still more valuable than having social media contact. But don't underestimate the power of social media, as in 80% of my clients are from different countries. So I'm Skyping every day, and I also meet new people through Skype. I just send them a message over Instagram saying like, hey, you're interesting, would you like to have a Skype call? And we end up having a Skype call. So it's also possible to network online.
Yeah, I mean just if I'm like a small DJ, they don't want to book me a flight, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's probably better to be just around the corner.
If you can get like a residency where you want to move, let's say you move to München, and you can get like a residency here, that might be an option, you know.
Right.
It's all about making decisions and finding the right balance, whatever you want and where you want to go with your career.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
And thanks for the videos online.
No problem. Great to hear you like them. There's one in the back.
So Joey, first of all I have to say I'm a big fan of you since 2030 or so.
Thank you.
I heard your single Life is Calling back in the days and I really liked it.
Thank you.
And currently I'm in a position where I make my money out of my music. I'm gigging like every weekend, like 4 to 8 shows a month.
Wow.
It really depends, but I really resonated with your story that I am like, sometimes I have a lot of anxiety and problems getting out of bed in the morning and just to have the motivation. I really like to make music and I really get all of my energy when I'm on stage, but I struggle a lot because I'm making this every day.
Mm-hmm.
I have a decent social media presence, I would say, but I'm struggling a lot, so.
Okay, and what's the main question in there?
The main question is what would you like what would you, because you have experience on that, what kind of advice would you give me to try to get out of this? I just try to get another perspective on it.
Yeah, what really helped me, and I think not only in the music industry but in general, people don't know that much about themselves. Like, I would spend more time about finding out who you are as a person, and this sounds really like witchcrafty, you know, like it's something weird or something, but you should dive deeper into yourself and find out what gets you going, you know, like what gets you that little spark to light that fire within you. And we all have it, you know, everyone knows that feeling of being fired up and energized to do something, and you need to find out what that little thing is. It could be a really simple thing like having a coffee in the sun.
So you mean like more personally, not like being the music thing, because I know the thing that really fires me up is on the stage and I bring good times to people, you know?
With music it actually works the same. To give you an example of how it works with me, if I listen to certain music, I get fired up. So that's why I created a playlist, a Get Psyched playlist, with like 10 songs in it. And those are like my favorite songs, and when I listen to them, no matter when I listen to them, I know I get that feeling. Another thing that works for me is watching documentaries, DJ documentaries. If I watch the Swedish House Mafia documentary, I'm all fired up to get started again. So just a few examples of what works for me to get my little spark going on. You need to find out what works for you. It could be a conversation with a friend of you about music, like talking about music, also could get your creative juices flowing. And we all have something. It's just different for everyone else. So you need to find out what works for you.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Any other questions? In the back. Oh, yeah, thanks. Thanks.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Tim. My question is, you said you ran into Hardwell. And I'm producing since a few years now, and I watched a few interviews with many producers, and they said you have just to contact the artist to get feedback on your track or something like this, what is not really true.
Yeah.
So my question is, what is the best way to get contact to producers?
Yeah. Like you said, sending an email simply doesn't work anymore. Let's be honest, you know, like you can send an email to a bigger DJ, to a demo drop or whatever. Chances are pretty small that you're going to get feedback on it. I actually had a really interesting talk about this with Sebastian from Revealed last week, and we kind of agreed on the fact that you should build leverage for yourself. And that if I think back in my own career, like thinking back on it in hindsight, the reason why Hardwell noticed me is because he liked my music. Somehow my music ended up on his desk. I don't know how, I just know it ended up there. And the only reason it ended up there is because I decided to release it somewhere in the past. So you should build leverage for yourself. You should build enough reasons for someone to like you or to like your music. And I think that's one of the best ways to get in touch with a bigger artist. If he notices a track from you, either through a playlist or through another DJ playing your song, or through whatever way he could notice your track. Maybe a friend tells him about you. You never know how those things. Way more open to play your second track and to listen to your third track, because you already have your foot between the door. So I think it's all about building leverage and to make as much opportunities possible to get on his desk with your music. And like I said, that could be anything.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Yeah.
Hi, I would like to know how you would advise or coach an artist that's not a big fan of social media, let's say that way. There's guys out there like Charmy, for example, where the music really speaks for itself and they don't post that much on Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
But for an upcoming artist that's really kind of a studio nerd and more into music and not putting his face into Instagram stories all day, how would you advise or coach somebody like that?
I think there's two options. Either you use social media or you don't. But do know, if you don't use it, you only have one option left, which is your music. So if you decide to do that, which is completely, you're free to go, you know, like you don't have to be on social media, but do know if you decide to go for the music only, your music has to be so good and your network has to be so good to get your music somewhere. So it's just going to get harder. That's the only thing I'm going to say. And most artists who don't use social media that much have a really strong brand and a really great story around it. Like, you know Zoo? ZHU? Like the marketing campaigns they do around those things are immense. And that's, I believe in that way it could work without social media, but social media could make it a lot easier, in my opinion. But I'm not saying it's undoable without social media, it just gets a bit harder.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, there's a question here. I'll just... Thanks. There you go.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, it's...
My name is Francis. You told us that in between 3 years from South Africa to India, you got that much pressure that you collapsed. How much of this pressure was self-made and how much of this pressure was from external sources like labels, contracts or whatever?
100% self-made. The only problem out there was here. And at that moment I didn't realize it. It's a good question actually. At that moment I didn't realize it because at first I thought I have too much pressure from fans, social media. I have too much pressure from social media. But now looking back at it, I actually liked social media. I liked marketing myself because like I told you with those goals, I liked to do that and I liked achieving those goals. I never really bothered it, but at that moment I thought it's the pressure from fans, it's the pressure from labels, it's everything out there instead of me. And then diving deeper into it, diving deeper to the core of me, I found out the problem was me. I didn't like flying that much. As a kid, I was homesick every single day. When I started to sleep at my neighbors, I got homesick, like 10 meters away. So it's not a weird thing that if I start traveling the world in my own and constantly get pulled out of my comfort zone, that started to do something with me. But I just never connected the dots. So good question. The problem was with me. It wasn't with the industry. I actually never felt overworked because I like my work. Like music is still my hobby. I still like listening to music. I still like producing music and playing music, but not on a professional level.
You got nobody around you telling you to slow down?
No. There were, of course, my family was around me and my friends. But the problem is, which I also experienced with the psychologists that I've seen and the coaches that I've seen, no one really gets your position. As in, I went to the psychologist and I can still remember her saying, like, I told her, like, yeah, I fly that much and I see a lot of different countries and people and I play for a lot of people. And the only thing she said was, oh, but it's nice to travel, right? I was like, fuck. It's like, no, yeah, it's fun to travel, but not in the way that I do it. I don't see anything from the city, you know, it's just airplane, hotel, airplane, hotel. And those people didn't really get my position. They didn't understand the context of it. And same for my parents. When I got back home, I traveled on my own. So when I got back home, and they asked, how was your trip? The only thing I could say was, here's 2 pictures. And those were 2 pictures of my shows. Like the highlight, the 1 hour of that whole tour, which was amazing. So she said like, oh, it looks great. It looks like you had a great trip. But in fact, 30 hours before that 1 hour and the 30 hours after that 1 hour were terrible. But they didn't see it. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm not sure how much time we have left, by the way. Oh, 15 minutes, okay.
I have a second question. Because of this kind of huge amount of pressure, and isn't it able for you, back in the days, wasn't it able to say you only do like 1 show in a week or something? Or is it like when the manager says, oh, there is a show and there is a show, there is a show, that he can't say no?
It's a bit more difficult. I'll try to explain. The thing is, the people that you're working with, the manager, the bookers, they are making money on you. So you're like top of the mountain. If you stop making money, everyone underneath you stops making money too. And of course, I could say I only want to do 1 gig a week or 1 gig every 2 weeks, but that meant my salary was going down. To give you context, my fee was between 1,000 and 3,000 per gig. So if I went from 10 gigs a month, which meant like 25,000 income, to 5,000 or 10,000, they were making less money on me, which made me less interesting to work with, which made me less interesting for them to sell. So I tried this, the things you mentioned, I tried it, because like I said before, I tried to find many ways to still make things work. I actually started playing in my hometown again, in a little bar, to still play music every month and not have to travel for it. But even that little thing was too much for me. So there's too many variables in an artist's career to make that work. I think this could work if you have fees from like, let's say 100,000, like Martin Garrix, Hardwell, Chesto, that kind of level. And even then, I think it's hard, because before you, there's like 10 other people making the same amount of money, which are more interested to work with. So it's not really personal, it's a business thing. That's what makes it so hard. The personal and business thing are almost connected to each other. There's someone next to you. Is it working?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay, I try.
Hi.
I'm Roman, and I had an idea since he asked this question. Maybe when you are at that certain point, when you feel, oh, everything's too much, maybe you can find a way to manage yourself. You know, when you say there are a lot of people, they are getting money because they have you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can find your own way to manage yourself. Maybe doing own label or so.
Yeah.
So you can run all by yourself, and you can manage it in a tempo. You can say that's good for me.
Yeah. It's possible, but the problem, at least with me, was if I started doing those things, I wasn't working on the problem itself. I wasn't working on the things that were caused by the problem. So I had to dig deeper to where the core of the problem was. Otherwise, you would just keep feeling that shit like for the rest of your life. And that's not the thing I wanted to do, because I tried for like a year maybe to make things work. But believe me, after a year of feeling shit, you just have one option, and that's quit. And that's why I decided to quit. Like, I just didn't see another way of doing it anymore. I tried everything. So there was just one thing left, and that's quit. So I think if there's something going wrong, if you feel inside yourself something is going wrong, business-wise, personal-wise, whatever, find out where the core of the problem is. Because it doesn't make sense to only fix the things around it, like the results of it. It only makes sense to fix the problem itself. Any other questions? Completely in the back? Oh, thanks.
My
Hi.
name is Rainer.
Hello.
Just got a quick question to you. You mentioned that as part of your kind of burnout, you stopped doing gigs, but also producing. What keeps you away from doing producing on a professional basis without traveling and gigging? Do you think it only works in a package if you do both?
Well, for me, because I didn't like what I was doing anymore, that completely blocked my creativity. So being in the studio wasn't fun anymore, because it didn't work out. I keep working and working and working, but everything I came up with just wasn't as good as I always made, because the creativity was gone. So it was like a negative spiral going down and down and down, and it was really hard to get out of it. So for me, not being able to tour and not being able to play that much resulted on me being not creative anymore, which led me to stop making music as well. Because, fun fact, right now, I do feel like making music again. I've actually built a new studio 6 months ago, mainly for clients, but now that I have the room, it's kind of tempting for me to start making music again, because it's there. The only thing I have to do is connect my computer and get started again. So I have made 2 new tracks. They're not out yet or whatever. I just make music for fun again. How I started this, you know? Like, I started because I liked what I was doing, and somehow I just completely lost that feeling. I completely lost the fun of making music, and that's all back now, but I'm talking 5 years later. So in between that, I just completely lost the connection with music. In the first part of it, when I started feeling bad, I even didn't like listening to music anymore. I just completely unplugged from the whole music industry. I started unfollowing DJs. I started unfollowing everyone I knew from the industry. I even almost deleted my Facebook account. But because my brother said, Joey, stop, because this might come in handy in the future, I didn't do it. And now I'm grateful, because otherwise I would have lost 90,000 people to connect with. But that's the mindset where I was. I was so completely done with the industry that I just wanted to throw away everything and restart fresh, a new life.
But still, in your opinion, there's still a place for producers that are not DJs or DJs that are not producers, so both can exist. It doesn't need to be both at the same time.
Well, no, I just think that if you only make music, like I said, it's going to be a bit harder. Of course, streaming services and stuff have made it a bit more interesting to make money on just music, but the main income from a DJ comes from the gigs. So it's not impossible, but it's just easier to do the gigging as well, or find a way to do it with someone else. You know, like Bassjackers does it. Bassjackers has one producer, and the other guy is just a DJ, and they've divided the work. That's also an option. But and Blasterjaxx did it as well, actually. When Idir stopped touring, he just focused on making music, and Tom started doing the tours. It's also an option.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Cool. I will be around here, so if you still have any other questions left, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks. I just want to thank you all for taking the time here today with me and to listen to my story. Yeah, enjoy Mixcon, and I hope to see you somewhere else. Bye.